welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP, you're going to get 20% off your order with that code FNP at simbody.com. You're really, really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
Oh, Michael Chandler with a beautiful shot. Dan Hooker is down and he is hurt.
Oh! Chandler's got him rocked. Chandler by TKO. Wow! What a debut by Michael Chandler. UFC lightweight. Holy smokes! Oh! He put him down. Dustin Warren beats Conor McGregor. Has done it. He put down Conor McGregor. Stephen A. Smith, watch this fight. That's the best 155 pounder I've ever seen.
Oh, he knocks him down. Canned by Francis. He's got him hurt.
He's going after the finish. Big uppercut from Ngannou. Stipe engages.
Stipe hurt him.
Oh, he dropped him. Ngannou's your champion.
Wow.
Francis Ngannou's the heavyweight champion.
Stipe cold.
Wow. What a finish, man. 9-1 in the night. 8-2 in the question mark kicks parlay hit. Fight night picks. Wow.
Wow.
Francis Ngannou. Holy smokes. Oh, man, give him the stool.
Who knew Patient Francis? A scary man.
Let's get into it. Wow.
And welcome back to another episode of Fight Night Picks question mark kicks. Really looking forward to today's episode. And if you haven't checked it out already, fightnightpicks.com, all sorts of great stuff over there, including those full card previews, the previews and predictions, as well as our own Joshua Hart's full card betting guide for the event. Who's he liking? What's he feeling as far as his best bets? Look at that, Gaethje Chandler, a little bit of Rose Namajunas, maybe Usman inside the distance. All sorts of great stuff over on the website. You can also check out our store, pick up some of the swag that the boys wear on the shows, including some of those black Fight Night Picks logo long sleeve shirts, the adjustable Under Armour caps. They're a nice one, especially for this fall weather, and those Under Armour t-shirts. All of this great stuff and more at fightnightpicks.com. You can find a link down below in the description. And as we always say, let's get into it.
Time card coming up this weekend, UFC 268. You heard the challenge out there in the full card preview. 1,000 likes for that overall full card preview. It's going to be the best episode of Question Mark Kicks yet, live 2 hours before the prelims. Let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks question mark kicks.
And just like that, we are back and so excited to be here for Fight Night Picks question mark kicks. Hopefully everybody is having a great Saturday, and we couldn't be more excited for UFC 268, Matt. Little bit of an inside baseball. I took the door off, put a solid door in the office. Now we're completely soundproof. My hair's falling out. I'm having a great time. Over in the comments section, Connor is having a good time. Ben, Corey McGregor, Todd's there as well. J. Dean 5. We got a parlay, boys. Maybe there will be. And Michael Ralph saying Covington will win. Let's go. Sean McMinn already hitting up the super chat. But we got dressed up because this is going to be the most special episode of Fight Night Picks question mark kicks that we've ever had. I've got a QMK parlay. I got dressed up. We have so many new things for this week's episode. And listen, I said that if we could get over 1,000 likes on those videos combined, that I would make this one a great one. We have not one, not 2, not 3. We have 7 guests set to appear on this show, including some of your favorite in the MMA community right now. A guy that wore a beer and a sign yesterday. So many things to get excited about. Sean McMahon over there, Prince Vegeta's son, Crypto Miner Builds saying the boys in suits. Listen, I think it's going to be a great card, Matt. Honest to goodness, like, I've got myself amped up now, but I could not be more excited about this
I was
card.
going to say, you're talking about all the new bells and whistles that we have, but we've also got a great card to talk about. People are forgetting. We went from having a phenomenal pay-per-view card just last weekend into another one this weekend. It's not like we're getting into just a fight night card. And we have 2 phenomenal title fights at the top, 2 rematches that I know everybody's excited for. Not just Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang, which should be a phenomenal fight. Just 2 women who represent, like, the peak of MMA. We have Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. The #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world is fighting in just a few short hours, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
Should be an awesome one. Again, if I miss your name over there, Ryan up there saying, guys look sharp. There's so many people that are very, very excited about this card. So Matt, why don't we do what we always do? We're going to flip it on over to our Fight of the Night screen, as always presented by Manscaped. Check them out, manscaped.com. Use promo code FNP. You're going to get 20% off and free shipping. New intro to this one, too. Let's get into it.
Let us know down below in the comment section who you've got. It's time for the Fight of the Night with Fight Night Picks.
And just like that, we're talking possible Fight of the Night for this card. And listen, there's so many people that were very critical of us on this particular screen because, listen, it's easy. You get a lob ball. This seems to be the most hyped up fight that's on this entire card, more so than the main event, a lot more so than the co-main event. UFC really decided that on their embedded show, Gaethje Chandler would take the cake, and then instead of highlighting it before the co-main, they decided to drop it down, make it a little bit of a pay-per-view curtain jerker to get people excited. I think this is going to be an amazing fight. Greg Harrison saying Gaethje versus Chandler should be interesting. Corey McGregor with Gaethje. I love this fight.
I don't know if the UFC was looking out for the boys in our fight companion later, but what a great way to start that show. Justin Gaethje, former WSOF champion. We all know how exciting he can be in the cage, and I had a few people reach out to me and say, are you worried? Justin Gaethje's been a little bit more hesitant in his last few outings. I still think this could be a great fight. Michael Chandler, we all know what he brings to the cage. Incredible forward pressure, crazy knockout power, really good wrestling. I don't know how this fight can't deliver.
Oh, it should be an awesome fight. Both of these guys with the wrestling in their back pocket, but with very, very good striking. I mean, Michael Chandler probably watching with a little bit of a gleam in his eye with Bellator last night. I mean, Patricky Pitbull winning the belt, his brother's old belt, and so on and so forth. But this should be a great one. And then the second pick, listen, we're going to have a lot of conversation about Quarantillo and Burgos because it seems like our guests could not be more excited for that fight. But I give you this, Alex Pereira making his UFC debut. Where's the hype? Where are the videos? I haven't seen them. And Andreas Michailidis gets such a great opportunity to play spoiler in this fight where, again, a lot of people disagreed with me actually in the comments section. I thought he looked really good against KB Buller in that fight. That's pretty easy to say. It's KB Buller, but still, this should be a great fight. And if Michailidis can bring in that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu European Championship he has in his back pocket and the kickboxing abilities that he has, he is a championship kickboxer, but nowhere close to Alex Pereira, the first and only simultaneous 2-division champion with glory. This should be an absolute barn burner.
It feels like this fight could go one of two ways. If Michailidis wins it, it could be kind of lackluster. Let's say he might not get as much hype as he probably deserves for beating Pereira. And the flip side would be Pereira knocks him out with a crazy combination, and Joe Rogan's immediately calling for him to start fighting like top 15 levels of talent already. Those are sort of the two different directions this fight could take, but I think it's going to be a phenomenal one. This has been said a lot, where there's not a more exciting time in a guy's career than right in the beginnings when they're sort of starting their ascent to the top. We might be witnessing that tonight with Alex Pereira.
Should be an absolutely amazing fight, and I can't wait for it. We'll switch it on back to our regular view that you know, that you love. We'll get back into it because what we always do with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, we start from the bottom, now we end up right here, and Justin Frank's hitting us up in the super chat, better
Justin.
late than never. Justin, you missed the whole intro. There's going to be a lot of people that do, but that's fine. We're going to keep that energy and that moxie going the entire card because there's so much to get excited about. And Matt, what we also had, I said we had plenty of guests, and we're going to kick this card off. Vergara taking on Osbourne at the bottom. We're going to throw it on over to our first guest of the show. You know him as Sunday Morning Cornerman, the co-host of Early Stoppage, an episode that's coming out very, very shortly. And I threw it on over to John in the episode that we taped on Thursday night about this card. Let's hear from John and his thoughts on UFC 268. John, you don't know the questions that I'm going to ask you.
Which is
and
always
really, they're going to
fantastic.
be, I'm putting them on a tee. I'm going to set you up really easily, and we'll just move quickly because in this week's episode of Question Mark Kicks, we're going to have some guests. I'm going to drop that nugget right here. If you pay attention to early stoppage, you're going to know that this stuff's coming up because, yeah, Question Mark Kicks, there's going to be plenty of guests, some of whom I've gotten back from, some of whom I haven't, but I told them, listen, you have plenty of time. Just don't worry about it. But they're already booked in. So, John, UFC 268, it's coming up this weekend. There's so many fights to look forward to. What's one under the radar storyline or fight or prospect that nobody's paying enough attention to coming up this weekend? What's something that's got your eye? And even if you want to pick main, co-main, or Gaethje Chandler, I'm 100% fine with that.
You know, there's a lot of these guys on this card. I don't say a lot, but like, you know, Phil Hawes, once upon a time was supposed to be a big thing. Edmen Shahbazyan. There's these guys that like we were making a big deal about, you know, maybe pre-pandemic or a little bit pre-pandemic. Panea's on this card. This card's got a lot of things going. I hate to say, listen, I'm gonna watch this fight with my son. We're gonna go somewhere fun like Dave and Buster's or something. We're gonna go check it out. So I may have one eye on him and one eye on the fights, but I can tell you right now, when Shane Burgos and Billy Q get in there, and this is a night of great fights. When Shane Burgos and Billy Q get in there, he's sitting next to me, and both eyes are on that fight. There's gonna be no skee ball. There's going to be no hoops being shot. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm really interested in that fight. In a night of when I'm interested in a lot of fights. I mean, listen, I had written Bobby Green off, but his style against Iaquinta, I mean, that's interesting. There's just a lot of interesting fights. You know, there's times when I'll watch a card and just kind of enjoy it. And there's times when I'm watching a card and I'm tweeting a lot and I'm like really into it. This feels like one of those cards where I'm tweeting a lot and I'm doing a lot of analysis. Even though I'm gonna have my kid with me, it just feels like one of those tweet heavy cards for me. And that is really when I'm into it. I could see a lot of fights I'm tweeting about.
John Franklin joining the show to talk about the fights that he's looking forward to. And I mean, listen, Billy Q Burgos, I said that's going to be a main focal point of this entire show of all the guests that we're going to have on. So if you like the guests, make sure you toss the like up there. But Matt, we're looking at this first fight on the card. CJ Vergara making his UFC debut. He's taking on Ode Osbourne. Ode, the former longtime bantamweight. That one featherweight fight against Jerome Rivera. Oh, Jerome. And then I look at this fight, and it's funny because Vergara missed weight, and it's definitely not a good look. Now, we're going to talk about that in our next fight. Melsik, Baghdasaryan, Bruno, Souza, same thing. Souza, UFC debut, misses weight, but for Vergara, a guy that blood and guts and great striking power, but he can eat a shot, but at the same time, he gets dropped a fair bit. Like, I really, really worry about this fight. It's kind of crazy. Survival of the Chillest saying, where's Canada on the map? Oh, come on, easy.
Second biggest country in the world.
I absolutely do love this fight, and I think it should be a good one, but it's definitely not a good look when you're missing weight for your UFC debut.
And that's why I have to switch my pick, and I have to get that out of the way right now. I don't like to switch my pick on question mark kicks, but I dislike it when a guy who is known for eating a shot to give a shot does miss weight, because I do assume that you are going to be compromised in some way, be that cardio or just your ability to take a punch. When you're fighting a guy like Ode Osbourne, the goal is to get on the inside of your range, and to do that, you're going to have to eat one or two punches to get on the inside of his punching distance. So I do worry about Vergara's durability all of a sudden due to the weight miss, so I do find myself switching my pick over to Ode Osbourne. Listen, if I'm wrong and Vergara is able to make his way on the inside, make this fight really ugly and grind it a decision, I'm okay with that. I echo what you say. I don't like the fact that he's missing weight for his UFC debut.
Matthew Buchanan over there in the comments section makes a great point. Ode got knocked out 3 months ago. Got to pick Vergara. He's got heavy hands. And for me, I looked at Vergara and I watched a lot of his fights. But again, when he fought Silva kind of on his way up, it was for the regional belt with Fury FC. He gets dropped really quickly in the start of that fight. Again, you look at this one, how much weight did he miss by? The question's there. If you actually look, and you've got an attentive eye, and I'm not calling you out, Bro Bogan, but I'm just saying, if you actually look, I make the weights over in that side. Those are all current for today. So that's what they weighed in, I guess I should say, on Friday, on weigh-in day. That was what he was at. But when I look at this one, It really, really is a tricky one. I actually have this in my question mark kicks parlay as the first leg. There's 3 legs today. Ode Osbourne minus 185 or thereabout. I have Osbourne. Again, odds are about there. If we get the comeback on the underdog in Vergara, he's about a plus 155 or thereabouts. So we go to Fight Night Picks at Fight Night Picks over on the Instagrams. The large majority here have the man himself, Ode Osbourne, to get the win at, let's see, 62% with Osbourne to 38% for Vergara. So for me, I'm going to be going with Osbourne. It is a tricky fight, though, because both guys susceptible to kind of getting knocked down, kind of getting hit, but I really, really do worry about that weight miss for Vergara. Could he come out here and finish Osbourne? 100%. It is a very 50-50 fight at 125. But for me, I like the ground game of Osbourne. I like the move that he's made over to Syndicate MMA for this training camp to get ready over there. I think John Wood and the crew are really going to help out a guy, especially in the lower weight classes, when you're able to train with guys like who? Like Jordan Nesbitt?
I agree with everything you said. I just think you shot yourself in the foot a bit. I don't think this is a 50-50 fight at all. Like, he's a 2-1 favorite for a reason, and the other guy missed weight. Like, Ode Osbourne should win this fight. He's a big favorite, and his opponent missed weight. I thought Vergara had a good opportunity, and I will say this. I wouldn't put this on my card. Again, I don't disagree with anything you said. I just have a lot of question marks about Vergara coming into the UFC anyways, and the fact that Osbourne was just finished not that long ago, and I don't want to draw any comparisons between Manel Kape missing weight and now Vergara missing weight. Listen, just because you miss weight doesn't mean you're going to win by knockout, but I do think Osbourne should be able to get this done. He's the more experienced fighter, and let's say this fight does get past the first round, it does become one of those grueling, sort of who wants it more type of battles. We know Ode Osbourne can at least mix it up a little bit more.
Matt, it should be a great fight. So we'll move forward. Our next fight on the night is Melsik Baghdasaryan, Bruno Souza. I touched on the fact that Souza missed weight for this one. He comes out of Machida Academy. You know exactly who he's training with. Well, not just Lyoto, but Chinzo. Chinzo.
It was mentioned in every interview this week.
The career could have been so great, but I absolutely do love this fight. It should be a great one. Now, we're going to bring in our second guest. Matt, I told you, we've got some heavy hitters like Frank Thomas with Zizaz. Our second guest on the show today, you know him from MMA fighting. You know him as the former host of, but also the current host of Between the Links Revamped. I'm talking about friend of the show. His name is Mike Heck. Let's hand it on over to Mike.
Gentlemen, the brothers Allan, thank you for inviting me to join the program this week. I am Mike Heck from MMAfighting.com. Of course, as everybody knows who is watching this right now, UFC 268 is a great card. The main card, really, really good. One of the best of the year. But what I want to focus on is how good these prelims are. From the opening bout on, Ode Osbourne versus CJ Vergara is a great matchup. We have Vergara making his debut. Unfortunately, he missed weight. Had a great showing on the Contender Series. Guy with a lot of upside. Absolute animal. Taking on another exciting fighter in Ode Osbourne, who also has a lot of upside, but he hasn't been able to string things together the way he would have liked thus far. But he does have some big card experience, so I understand the betting lines being what they are right now. That's a very good fight. Melsik Baghdasaryan and Bruno Souza, 2 strikers with long storied martial arts backgrounds. We got Muay Thai versus karate, expected banger there. And on top of that, we got potential showcase fights for exciting newcomers Garry and Alex Pereira. And then Dustin Jacoby takes a fight on short notice. He's been on a tear, so expect big things from him. And then on top of that, we got Ally Quinta versus Bobby Green. We got Edmen Shahbazyan trying to get back on track versus a really tough opponent in Nassourdine Imavov. Phil Haas versus Chris Curtis, who is finally in the UFC. And of course, the people's main event, 2 big bulls, John Villante versus Chris Barnett. Villante's final fight of his career, doing it in New York against a big, powerful brawler. And it's a mysterious fight, since it could be the most violent and fun fight on the card, or it could be just kind of awful, but still really fun at the same time. So my advice for the esteemed question mark kick viewers, don't sleep on the prelims. Don't sleep on the prelims. And if you're going to the card, get there early, watch the prelims, because if you don't, you'll be sorry. Back to you, Craig and Matt.
And a special thank you to Mike Heck for joining us. You know him, you love him, and I used to be on the show Between the Links with the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network before Mike ended up over on MMA Fighting. A little bit of fun fact for you. And if you didn't know, I did a little bit for MMA On Point too at one point, but that's neither here nor there. There's so many people over in the chat that are absolutely loving the guests. So Matt, we'll talk about this fight. Melsik Baghdasaryan, one of the best kickboxers you're going to find in not just this weight class, but in all of MMA, taking on the pure karate artist that is Bruno Souza. And you look at the way that both of these guys strike. For Melsik, it's aggression. It's balls to the wall. From the first moment and the time they say go, you look at his fight on Contender Series, didn't really impress the boss enough, and Dana White wanted him back on a later episode of Contender Series last year. He just decided to forego that, waited a little bit longer, got the call up, got to fight Colin Anglin, a pure wrestler. And when they fought, Anglin decided, well, I'm not a wrestler, I'm a striker. In that fight, Melsik was Melsik, and it was an absolutely amazing fight. Great win for Baghdasaryan. Souza coming in here, the former LFA featherweight champion. He's taken on a good level of competition, Matt. I think this is going to be a great fight. What are you thinking?
This should be a really fun fight, and I'm going to compare Baghdasaryan to Scotty Barnes for the Toronto Raptors. Now, hear me out. When Barnes got drafted by the Raptors, it was okay. If everything goes well, he'll be like a superstar, really, really good. But there's like a 20% chance that he might just show up and have no idea what he's doing. I kind of felt that way with Melsik coming into the UFC. It was, okay, if everything goes right for him, we've got a really exciting striker here. But in the back of your mind, there were some holes in his game. You were worried what was going to happen when he fought a wrestler. You can see the comparison. Now, the great news is that when Melsik did make his UFC debut, any question marks I had surrounding just sort of his overall, striking game in the MMA world were completely erased because he's got such great range management and distance usage. I think he's going to be able to use that a lot against Susan. I like what you said about his aggression. It's not just the fact that he's an aggressive striker. He has a good combination of volume and power. He's not somebody who just relies on that one big punch to knock out his opponent. He can put together 2, 3, 4 strikes. So I really think Melsik is a very exciting prospect in this division.
Well, you let us know over in the comments section who you have in this fight because, listen, you look at this, and for Souza, I've seen him in some 50-50 exchanges in the striking. He's not that bad. His striking defense maybe leaves a little bit to desire, but when he's getting backed up, he's always waiting for that counter. And I think of it, with his training partner, with his coach, the man himself, Lyoto Machida. Bert hitting us up in the super chat, getting high, some crypto gains, and he's got his thoughts over there on Usman Covington under 2.5 rounds. I think he's going to go over that. I really do. Probably. But when I look at this fight, Matt, I mean, for Souza, you can see him almost waiting, baiting, almost like Machida did, and then he was able to land those 2 flying knees against Uncle Chael. And that's what I see out of Bruno. Just wait. Against a guy like Melsik, I worry about that, plus the fact that Bruno missed weight. I had Melsik at the start of the week. I definitely still have him right now.
I agree 100%. And the last point I want to make on this fight is you're going to hear that Machida comp a lot, but it is almost to a T. Like, you can tell Souza has spent a lot of time with the Machidas training throughout the years because they do fight in a very similar manner. It's not just something the commentary is going to say. You'll be able to see that very early on.
All right, so we look at the odds for this one. Baghdasaryan open to -185. Ooh. He's -383 right now. Souza open to +160. He's +295. Matt, the craziest part about this, the QMK parlay, I got Melsik at a -375. I got Ode Osbourne at a -185. Those are 2 of the 3 in that QMK parlay. So I absolutely love this fight. I think it should be a great one. But for me, and for both of us, we're going with Melsik Baghdasaryan. So we move into our next fight. This one on short notice. You have Dustin Jacoby stepping in for Alexa Kammerer at the start of the week. John Allan, still fit and ready, making it at 205 pounds on the nose. And this guy's had one of the weirdest runs getting into the UFC, but also staying in the UFC. He was a guy that got popped by USADA after he picked up his first win over Slow Mike Rodriguez. Ultimately, he loses a bit of his career. His last time out, he takes on Roman Dolidze. And in that fight, it was a tale of 2 different fights. He gets held down, but when it's in the striking, he has a lot of success. And I talked about the fact that I almost said Bruno Souza. John Allan was the guy that I had going into his fight with Alexa Kammerer when we were getting ready to film the videos as beating Alexa Kammerer. He was the underdog in that fight. In this fight, I think he's going to have a little bit of a hard time, but the striking that we're going to have in this one should be absolutely amazing, and that's what makes this fight so much fun. I don't see this one touching the ground.
No, I don't either. This is what I'm going to say. I never pick anybody on a week's notice, and I think Dustin Jacoby's going to win this fight. John Allan was facing an opponent in Alexa Kammerer who was a big puncher, but really just threw single shots, and that was the big part of his game. He'll throw some light kicks, he'll throw an okay variety of kicks, but nothing that's really going to surprise you, and he really likes to load up on his punches and try to get you with that one punch when you're up against the cage. That's all fine and dandy, but when you're fighting a guy with good technique like John Allan has, it's really hard to rely on that one big punch. So John Allan was getting ready for a fight where he expected to be the much more technical guy. Now he's fighting one of the more technical Muay Thai strikers in the division. And when I say that about Dustin Jacoby, a lot of people are going to think, oh, you mean, Jacoby's one of the best fighters in the division? No. But what I do mean to say is, when he's at range, and when he's given the ability and the time, and just sort of the range, I guess is the point I'm trying to make, to really set up his strikes, he's a nightmare to deal with. And he does have, I would say, porous takedown defense. If he ever fights a really top-level wrestler, they're probably going to be able to exhaust him with their own wrestling. But when he's forced to just stand and trade with guys in the feet, he normally takes them down and out pretty easy. So I like Dustin Jacoby a lot in this matchup.
Clay over in the comments section also has Jacoby to get the win. Let's have a look at the odds, just have a little bit of fun with this one. For Jacoby, he is a giant favorite. Open to -250, he's -391 right now. For John Allan, open to +210. He's now at a +301, and I really want to highlight, again, the 5 on in for both these guys. This is the third fight going on onto this card. The Rodriguez fight for John Allan 2 years and 3 months ago. He fought Roman Dolidze almost 11 months ago. The thing for Jacoby, the win streak, the draw that he had against Ion Kutsalaba, but you look at it from Contender Series on, beats Ty Flores, Justin Ledette, Max Grecian, Kutsalaba, and then Darren Stewart. This fight doesn't make a whole lot of sense as far as where everybody's ranked and where everybody's at. And I think the kickboxing advantage with Jacoby compared to the Muay Thai out of John Allan, yes, it's Factory X Muay Thai against Shoot the Box, but for me, I like Jacoby in this fight. So Matt, we'll move into our next one, and this is one that, again, a lot of people are critical. I can't wait to hear what people are saying about this one. Gian Villante taking on Chris Barnett, because for Villante, the craziest part about it is we just kind of assumed, okay, loser probably goes home out of this fight, but Gian decided, okay, the ball's in my court. This is the retirement fight. And if you look at it for Gian Villante, again, that weight that you see next to us, that is the correct weight that he stepped on the scale at yesterday morning. For Villante at heavyweight. So again, let's even go back. He fought Michael Olashechuk back in 2019, weighed 206 pounds. He fought Maurice Green, he weighed 255. He fought Jake Collier, he weighed 243. He weighed in for this fight at 260.6. Chris Barnett is a guy that used to fight at super heavyweight, and he was able to make the weight. So over in the comments section, Matt, Fearless Red has Barnett by TKO. Laos Nan saying hot dog versus hamburger. So there's a lot of different things out there right now as far as the people making picks. But I look at this one. Awesome that Villante gets to retire, gets a hometown feel for the fight. Obviously a Long Island guy.
Okay. This is like when Corey Joseph got 7 homecoming videos when he came back to the Raptors after he went on 9 different teams.
Stop talking about the Raptors.
No, hear me out.
Cares.
We're acting like Gian Villante deserves a 3-day parade like Dwayne Wade did when he retired. Gian Villante's 17-13, and he's gained 60 pounds in his last 3 fights. Like, these are all really concerning points, and this is something that gets brought up a lot in boxing. When a guy moves up in weight near the end of his career, people think his career is automatically over, because that's a sign that you're either not training as hard as you once were, you're not as dedicated as you once were. Just, there's normally a lot of red flags that come along with a guy when they balloon up in weight. Gian Villante went from 205 pounds to 260 pounds. And Betch Kohea, it was her retirement fight. It wasn't that long ago. She announced, it's my retirement fight. I know we weren't really high on her going into that matchup anyways, but I remember her missing weight, and it immediately clicked in my head. I'm like, oh, she probably just doesn't really care that much about her own retirement fight. And I gotta be honest, I kind of think Gian Villante's in that same boat. I know the odds are really close on this fight, but the fact that Villante gained so much weight leading into his last fight just makes me think that he's probably not showing up the best version of himself. And I don't think Chris Barnett's going to go on to become some top 15 powerhouse of a fighter in the heavyweight division by any means, but I think he's going to be better than a fighter who's just showing up for his last fight.
Well, I mean, that's it. A lot of people were very critical of Chris Barnett in the comments section this week. It was, oh, well, who is he beating anyway? But look at the losses, too. He's been in there against a lot of very, very high-level fighters. Again, the 5 on in for both these guys. For Barnett, it almost looks squeaky clean. Obviously, he lost by go-go choke to Ben Rothwell's last time out, but stuff like that's going to happen. And yeah, the wins, maybe not that sexy coming into it, but if you look throughout Chris Barnett's overall body of work, he grappled with Yoel Romero. He fought Alex Nicholson. Yikes. He fought Frank Tate. Yikes. Ollie Thompson, but then he beat Ollie Thompson's coach after that to end up into the UFC. He's got a win over Travis Weuf. Neat stuff. There's a lot of big names on that record for Chris Barnett. For me, I like the Taekwondo. I like the athleticism early. Neither one of these guys have gas tanks, especially at heavyweight. You saw that out of Barnett the last time, but he was able to pop himself back up against Ben Rothwell, and that's not easy to do. So Let's have a look at this one very quick. Honestly, I kind of considered putting this one on the question mark kicks parlay. I had a bet on this one earlier on in the week because Barnett was open to plus 130, down to a minus 135. He's now plus 108 underdog. Villante now a minus 131 favorite. I took the favorite at the start of the week. Now I guess I have the underdog. It's still the same fighter. I've got Chris Barnett in this one.
Yeah, I like Barnett. It's not because I think he's going to go on to have some great UFC run. I just think he's better than Jean Villante today.
Yeah, it is a very, very tricky one. Austin Laxon saying Barnett has wild kicks, and Voodoo saying Barnett by round 1 KO. If you've got Villante, you let me know over there.
We're both hoping for a first round finish either way, though. I don't want to see this fight in the third round. I don't want to see minute 10 to 15 between these two guys. We would just see a lot of lazy clinch work and no significant strikes through.
Don't need to yell in my ear. Now we get into our next fight, and Matt, I think Ian Garry's a big deal. I think he's going to be a very, very big deal. Layla Annalee already thinks that he's a big deal, and all of Ireland is behind him, and they're all very disappointed in Bellator 270's co-main event, Old Patchy, and main event, Old Patricky, because their guys lost. Now they got to wake up. They're going to sing Zombie, Zombie, Zombie to get ready for Ian Garry. And this is a great fight. I mean, for Ian Garry, we talked about it at the start of the week. This is a young guy at 23 that's undefeated as a pro. He has one early loss as an amateur, but it's crazy because that career only started a number of years ago. And I look at this fight where Ian Garry, such a good boxer, and that's the discipline that he started at when he was a kid. Then he got into judo, became a black belt, and you look at the way that this guy brings his entire game together, it's so very good. For Jordan Williams, good puncher, good heart, but just that, I don't think carries you to win over Ian Garry.
He got choked out by Mickey Gall, and I don't think Mickey Gall is near like the top 15 by any means. Not
but he
even
also
close.
knocked out Gregory Rodriguez, who is very good.
Who is a good fighter, but Ian Garry is a very defensively responsible fighter who's got great cardio, who's got a really diverse wrestling game, who's really dedicated to his game plan, who's got great striking into the clinch. Like, Ian Garry, I truly believe, will be a ranked fighter. Maybe not by the end of next year, because he is very young in his MMA career. He's only 23 years old, so there will be some growing pains, I'm sure, throughout his UFC tenure, but I really do think he's special, and I do think he's got the total package, even in terms of just, like, the X factor outside the UFC. He speaks very well, he gives very good interviews, so I do think Ian Garry is the real deal, and if he can get a win over Jordan Williams, I could see that matching him up with Mickey Gall next, in all honesty, just to try to give Garry some of that shine off of Gall's previous win.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I see a few people up there in the comments section, Eric saying he's not hype at all with those results. I hope you're not talking about Ian Garry, but to me, I really do think Garry is that hype, and I saw it from MPTV, the fact that Gary's no Paddy Pimblett. I really do think that he is on that level. I think he's going to be a guy that absolutely breaks through as a superstar. In this fight, minus 400 favorite. I've got him as the third leg of the QMK parlay, so him, Ode Osbourne, Melsik, Baghdasaryan, plus 144 on my card. I've got those three guys, but yeah, I absolutely love this fight. I'm only going to put pocket change on it, because again, it's very, very chalky with those three fighters, but Jordan Williams, great win over Gregory Rodriguez. He has some good ones on his record, but to me, some of those losses that he's got out there, they really puzzle me. I mean, even that Kazula Vargas fight that he had years ago, they just bang, and Kazula bangs a little bit harder, so it is what it is, but for me, I've got Garry in this fight.
No, I couldn't agree more. Again, I think he might be one of those fighters who 4 fights into his UFC tenure gets like a main event slot to crack into the top 15. You know what I mean? Like, I could really see the UFC putting marketing behind him and trying to build him up in this division.
Fearless Red 25's got Williams by decision. Eric Cote, I guess I misunderstood there a little bit. Matt, we look at our next fight. We have Edmen Shahbazyan taking on Nassourdine Imavov. And Matt, this is where we need a little bit of help on this one. We're going to bring in our next guest to the show. You know him as maybe the best looking man in all of combat sports. He's boots on the ground for UFC 268 in New York City. It seems like every week he's traveling. He's a man with cats. He's a man with
beautiful
very long hair and a very nice mustache. You know him as friend of the show, Drake Riggs. Matt, let's throw it on over to Drake.
What is up, FNP fam? It is I, Drake Riggs, here to talk some UFC 268 real quick. I am here on the ground in New York City, so what do they say? Let's get into it. When it comes to the top prospect on this card, for me, I really like Nassourdine Imavov. Imavov, let me get the pronunciation right there. My goodness. Looked great in his last fight. Got the TKO over Ian Heinisch. You don't see that very often, so I like Imavov as maybe the top prospect on this whole card. When it comes to the potential fight of the night, I think it's a no-brainer that I mean, Chandler Gaethje, that is maybe my favorite matchup of all time on paper, so I think that is a guaranteed chew-in for fight of the night. But maybe the sleeper or the dark horse pick, I gotta go with a fight that surely won't be a good fight in terms of technique and that kind of thing, but in terms of entertainment value, Gian Villante and Chris Barnett has the makings of just heavyweight nonsense. So if I was to pick a sleeper, I'm going to go with that one. And there's plenty of great options on this card, of course. And then as for the undercover storyline, it might not seem like one, especially to hardcore fans, but I think Alex Pereira's UFC debut is kind of being overlooked by how good this card is. Of course, he's a phenomenal striker. He's known for being the guy to knock out Israel Adesanya. Yeah, we preach that every single time we talk about the guy, but he did it, so that's a pretty big accomplishment. So I think his debut is actually being a little bit overlooked, despite all things considered. So those would be three things that I would highlight, I suppose, from this card. Going to be fun, as it generally is here in New York, so do not miss it. And tune in to all the fun action we have this weekend. And, of course, check out all the good things that FNP are doing. I know you already do it. You don't need me to tell you, but let's get into it anyways, right? It doesn't feel right for me to say that. All right, back to you guys.
And a big thanks to friend of the show, Drake Riggs. We always bring up these friends of the shows, but there you go. You have Drake and Matt. This is probably the most amazing audience that we've had tuning into Fight Night Picks Kicks in some time. If you can toss us a like and a sub, you won't be disappointed. We have the Fight Companion later on tonight. But if you look at it for Drake, he's talking about Nassourdine Imavov as being one of the biggest prospects on this card, which is such a nice bit of praise to throw his way, because I think a lot of people are past the point of calling Imavov a prospect. And listen, I think he's still kind of in that category. Young in his career, MMA Factory with Ferdinand Lopez. Then he has the man himself, the champion, Cyril Gahn at the gym. So for me, I absolutely love this fight, because for Imavov, he's got that shine, the loss to Phil Haas, but he's fighting higher up on the card. And he has that knockout win over a good wrestler, Ian Heinisch. For Edmen Shahbazyan, I've talked about this so many times. You look at him, he's a one-hitter quitter. He's a first-round man, and when that fight gets out of the first round, he either loses, like his last two fights, or he squeaks by and wins a split decision over Darren Stewart, where, did he really win it? I don't know, but it was a close fight. Regardless, he still has the W on his record. I think this is going to be an amazing fight, and this is one of the tougher ones to try and give an actual prediction on here.
This is the fight I was trying to sell to my non-MMA fans the most this week, because I had a few friends who were like, oh, I don't really want to stay up for the main card. Is there anything on the prelims I should make sure I watch? This is the fight I told them to watch, because people forget just how big of a star Edmen Shahbazyan was promised to be at one point, because he had that star potential to him. He'd been training with Ronda Rousey since he was like 13. She's his manager, of course. And he's a really exciting prospect, too. Really young. He's got great knockout power, a great variety of shots, too, because he can get it done with his kicks, with his boxing. Like, he's one of these Michael Olashaychuk types where if we just want to talk about the positives, then, oh my goodness, Edmen Shahbazyan has it all. If you want to talk about the negatives, though, there's a few really big drawbacks and a couple big red flags. Like you mentioned, the cardio is a big concern for him. We've seen him really struggle against two heavy grapplers who just make you feel their presence in his last two fights, and he hasn't looked good against them whatsoever. And the thing that I worry about with Shahbazyan is his defensive grappling once his cardio does fade, because I think he's a pretty good grappler. I really do. He's shown a good ability to offensively wrestle. He's got good takedown defense. I do think his cardio is just such a big liability that the rest of his game kind of falls apart. Now, I know that's a big negative. I still think Edmen's going to win this fight, and this is my reason. With Edmen and his last two opponents, they were two wrestlers who, again, really push the pace on their opponent and make you feel their presence in the cage. With Nassourdine Imavov, if he did that, he would have beat Phil Haas, because later on in their fight, he was teeing off on him. My thing with Imavov is that he can take advantage of an opponent when they do get tired, but I don't think he's going to put enough of a pace on Edmen to really force him to fatigue.
Lethal Latin, let's go! Hanging out at the house party. Got us on the big screen,
what's
so
up, guys?
Appreciate you and everybody that's watching out there. Kyle Kelly saying love Imavov by point, on point, and then Fight League Atlantic, Imavov in the first easily. Wow. Fight League Atlantic with FLA 2. It was an awesome show.
It was.
And I was so glad to have returned to MMA in New Brunswick. We missed NEF. That was last night from Port Lemaine, 15-100. Jay Ellis.
He got back on the winning track.
Did he?
Yeah, he won.
Oh, he won. Wow.
By ruining a choke in like 49 seconds.
I missed it because it wasn't on Tapology. But Matt, yeah, for this fight, if we have a look at the odds for this one, you had Edmen at the start of the week. I had Imavov. The odds, Edmen plus 100, Imavov minus 120. I'm going with Imavov in this fight still. I think, again, we talk about it, the letter Kenny reference, pitter-patter, let's get at her. I think he's going to be able to pitter-patter from the outside, but he's got pop at the end of his shots, and he's really good with his range management. I think that's key and very imperative in a fight like this. As far as the grappling, neither one of these guys, I'd say Edmen maybe a bit more offensive with his takedowns than Nassourdine, but both guys with very good takedown defense. It's just Nassourdine has a really, really good gas tank, and I think that helps him in this fight. So we're in disagreement here.
Yeah, we are. Again,
that's fair.
Imavov just doesn't have the game that makes you feel his gas tank. Like with Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping had a great gas tank, so he would throw hundreds of strikes because of it. Imavov has a great gas tank, but he's more than happy to kind of wait around on the outside and not really implement that gas tank and weaponize his pace and cardio. So I do think he's got the better cardio. I just don't think it's going to matter as much as we believe.
Should be an awesome one. So Matt, we move into our next fight, and this is where Phil Haas takes on Chris Curtis. And listen, I've seen a couple of wild and crazy takes on this fight, and it just so happens that we have a guest to come on this show that I think is going to light up the internet, because, I don't know, people just must assume that we're over here on this Fight Night Picks Island, and we don't talk to anybody else in MMA Twitter. We don't talk to any of these guests. We have no affiliation with them. We just bury our heads in the sand in Canada, or in the snow, I should say.
But hold up.
And we don't...
We them boys.
Yeah, we them boys. So, Matt, I'm not even going to say who our guest is. I'm just going to let him introduce himself. Matt, our next guest to the show, let's get into it.
What is going on, everybody? Clint here from the Die Hard MMA podcast, talking about UFC 268. And I want to talk to you about my fighter to watch this weekend. That's right. We have got Philip Haas taking on my guy, Chris Curtis. This is the spot to keep your eyes on. I took a big bet shot on the underdog here. We've got Chris Curtis plus 260 coming in. I got a half unit on the knockout prop at 6-1, and I sprinkled that round 3 at 26-1. We're looking to score with this kid. The thing you may not realize about Chris Curtis is that he fought none other than the PFL champion Cooper and the PFL runner-up Magomed Karamov in the same night. Now, I want to shout out my boy Cody Saftik from the Dogger Pass podcast for this story, because he's the one that put it together, not me. I can't take credit for it. But what you need to know is that Chris Curtis has only been knocked out one time his entire career by Ray Cooper, a man who knocks out everybody and could more than hold his own in the UFC, after fighting a full 15-minute fight against Magomed Karamov, and then looking fantastic against Cooper in the first round. He finally got clipped and caught and put down in round 2 of that spot. This man's cardio, durability, toughness, willing to fight is legendary, and he's going in here against Phil Haas, a guy that we have seen tire out, a guy that we have seen slow down and gas out the later the fight goes. He's my fighter to watch. He's my underdog to back for this weekend. I hope you all enjoy the fights. Good luck if you have any action, and thank you, of course, to you guys here for having me on the show. Good luck.
Let's go! We got Clint from the Die Hard MMA pod on the show. Hopefully everybody enjoyed his take on the fight. Now, I saw from him, and of course he mentioned it, but Cody Saftik, both those guys going with Chris Curtis by way of the fact that Chris Curtis, good gas tank, and the guy is tough AF. You know that, I know that, Matt knows that. This is such an interesting fight because Curtis actually weighed in at more than Phil Haas, which is kind of funny, and this fight was originally to take place a few weeks ago on weigh-in day when Deron Wynn couldn't make it, so Curtis stepped in. Ultimately, he gets that shot, and for Chris Curtis, I mean, listen, Mike Heck talked about it, and Clint talked about it. This is an awesome opportunity for him in this fight. But the best part of it, I disagree with Clint, but that's why I like to talk it out with guys like him, because listen, we can all have different perspectives on this fight. It should be an amazing one, but Matt, I've got Phil Haas, as Caitlin Lockhart's saying, I've got Haas all day.
Here's the good thing for Chris Curtis. Let's just give him his flowers for a second. He proved that in MMA, the best thing you can be is ready at all times.
And active.
And active, especially. But he was willing to say yes when no one else was to fight Phil Haas on a day's notice. Because, hey, Phil Haas is a really hard opponent to get ready for, even if you had a 2-month training camp. So the fact that Curtis was so willing to say, like, yeah, I'll do it. It's just really nice to see the UFC actually reward him and still give him this fight. And allow him a few more weeks to get ready for it, too.
Todd hitting us up in the super chat. The Trevor Whitman, Nick Nurse of the MMA. He doesn't wear a TW hat at the press conferences, but he does rock the Onyx stuff.
Exactly. 2 great coaches in their own right. But the big thing is going to come down to Chris Curtis's durability, and that's my issue. When I hear, oh, this guy's so durable, this guy is durable, and of course he is. If you watch this fight, he can take a tremendous shot. I just really worry about any guy who's relying on their durability when they're fighting Phil Hawes.
Catlin Lockhart. Did I get it right there? It's Cat. Apologies. Go ahead.
I just worry about anybody relying on their durability when they fight somebody like Phil Hawes. And yes, if Hawes just punches himself out going for that finish early, then maybe Curtis can make up the difference late. It's just really, really hard to rely on your chin and good gas tank when you're fighting someone like Hawes, who is overall the bigger fighter. So let's say Hawes just decides to try to wear on him in the clinch. That's going to make their gas tanks a lot closer than what they probably are going into the fight.
100%. And I mean, John really digging the suit. If you see me at a live event, you might see me wearing this or one of the other ones in the rotation, Matt. Hawes open to minus 350 favorite. He's minus 320 right now for Chris Curtis. Open to plus 275, plus 253. So the money has come in on Chris Curtis. Uncle Charles saying Curtis wins round 3, plus 1,800. For me, I still like Hawes in this one. I think wrestling round 1, round 2, and if he's able to have any semblance of cardio in the 3rd round, which is a scary thing to worry about, I think he's still going to be able to get it done. But yeah, people are talking about just a little bit of a sprinkle out there. I still have Hawes here.
We've seen this quite a bit lately where you have fighters making their UFC debuts at a weight class higher than what they're probably going to be at for the rest of their career. And I understand they want the opportunity, you want to get your foot in the door and be a UFC athlete. But Chris Curtis is one of these examples where it's not like the rest of his career is going to be spent at middleweight. No, he's going to go back down to welterweight, and that's where he's probably going to spend his whole career. So I think he can make this a competitive matchup. I just don't really think he belongs in the weight class.
All right, Matt. Next fight that we have on the card, Raging Ally Quinta off a big layoff, taking on King Bobby Green. I really want to hear from everybody over in that comment section. Who do you have in this fight? Because this is honestly one of the trickiest fights on this night.
I love it.
I think it's an amazing fight. John Franklin talked quite a bit about this fight, but this should be such a good one. I mean, Bobby Green has that cardio. Both these guys really do. The shoulder rolls, the defensive wrestling. And for Al, he has all those same attributes, but maybe with even some bigger wins on his resume. Look at the 2 Kevin Lee fights. So I absolutely love this one. I think it should be an amazing fight. In the comments section, Rick Grimes has Bobby Green. Ryan Bobby Green, Luke Bobby Green, Thomas saying close though, and then Josh is going with Bobby. There's a lot of Bobbies. There's a few Als, but there's not a lot of Als. And then VT saying Al fought Habib too, champ experience. So there is that. But I mean, in this fight, to me, it's a little bit more clear cut. Again, I said it was a close fight, but what are you thinking?
Al Quinta fights just like Stipe Miocic, doesn't he? Like, I was watching Al fight Cowboy earlier today, and I was like, oh my goodness. Like, you know Joe Rogan says, oh, if you saw Cub Swanson silhouette fighting, you know exactly who it is. If I saw a silhouette of Al Quinta, you could tell me it's Stipe, and I believe you. It's just, they don't move that great, but they're extremely effective. They're not the best wrestler, but they're really good at wrestling. They don't have tremendous cardio, but they've got really good cardio. They're just both really well-rounded fighters who primarily use their boxing and counter wrestling. I just don't really know where Al Quinta is in his MMA career right now. Like, he's had a lot of time off between his last few fights. He was on a great run where it really felt like, okay, if he didn't beat Habib, of course, but after that fight, it felt like, wow, if he can string together a few wins, they had a competitive fight, it was on short notice, like, maybe he could have a competitive fight with him in the future. And there was talk about Al Quinta getting matched up with the likes of Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, like, those types of names in the division, and that was sort of the level of star that Al Quinta was at that time. It's just sort of unfortunate that he has had a lot of time off, and he hasn't been as consistent as he was in the past. I just don't think this version of Al Quinta's like, oh, I really want to become champion. Like, he's got a really successful career outside the UFC. And the thing about Bobby Green is that I've written him off more times than I could even count, and he's always been able to sort of reinvent himself. And it's not by adding a crazy new technique. He just kind of becomes more Bobby Green, if anything, but he's a brutally effective boxer in MMA.
Steven Soriano brings up a really good point about Al and his camp, and I think that's going to pay great dividends in a fight like this. And for John Quinn, I mean, Southern New Brunswick's finest, it's mine now, bud, and I've got the blue pants to match this suit. But Matt, I look at the odds for this one. Green right now minus 189 is honestly too rich for my blood, and Al Quinta at a plus 155. I said this is a very, very close fight. I like Green, but ever so slightly, so I wouldn't put any cheddar on this one. It's pop and popcorn for Craig, but yeah, for me, I've got Bobby Green here. I think those long-range weapons, Al is the type of guy that can press you forward. That scores well with the judges. Again, Cardio Kings, you look at Green's last fight against Fiziev if you want a great example
neither
of that.
guy's getting tired in this fight.
No, 100%. So if I really, really did want, to go with this, I might go fight to go the distance. But for me, I like Green in this one.
Both these guys are extremely durable, so I do like that fight goes the distance bet. But this is going to be fight of the night, I think. Like, the more I think about this fight, I don't know how it doesn't deliver. Both guys need a lot of volume to win their fights, so I just think it's going to make for an all-time classic. Whether or not either guy ever cracks into the top 15 again, I think this will be a great fight entertainment-wise, but I'm going to stick with the Bobby Green pick. I just think he can string together his punches a little bit better, and he does have a better reach than Ally Quintus, so if he can just set up his range and keep his distance a little bit earlier on, I think he can get off to a pretty good lead in this fight.
Over 870 tuning into Question Mark Kicks this week.
everyone.
An absolutely wild episode. You toss a like, you get the party started and get it moving. And Matt, we're going to keep the party started and moving because we have probably the biggest guest to come on the show this week to talk about Andreas Michailidis and Alex Pereira. And Matt, I think this fight's amazing. We dropped the audio from the JRE podcast for this one. Alex Pereira is the scariest kickboxer out there to make an MMA debut in 2021. I think that's not a crazy thing to say. So we're going to bring in a guest to the show. And again, I'm not going to just say who it is. We're just going to let him introduce himself. I don't even think he says his name in it. I pop his thing up. You toss a like. You're going to get the biggest guest of the night, Matt. Here we go.
The kind of under the radar thing I'm looking to watch at UFC 268 is Alex Pereira. And this guy trains with Glover Teixeira, but in kickboxing, he was such a phenom. Watching what he was able to do in the middleweight and light heavyweight division, becoming a 2-division champion, beating Vakhitov, was really one of the toughest kickboxers out there. I need to see what this guy's going to do in MMA. He's 34. I know he wants to fight Israel, who he knocked out in kickboxing, and he's going to have to really move up the ladder quickly and have some highlight reel finishes in order to do that. And I think against Andreas Michailidis, it might be the first step for him to do that. We'll have to see on Saturday.
Aaron Bronstedter's excited. We really appreciate Aaron joining us, a fellow Canadian from TSN. He's there live on scene, on location, UFC 268, but really want to thank Aaron for coming on the program. Matt, Andreas Michailidis take on Alex Pereira. This is such an amazing fight because for Michailidis, a European BJJ champion, he had big things going his way with Titan FC, BFG. You're hitting us up saying, best way to get hyped up for a big card. Let's get into it.
Thank you.
But Matt, we look at this fight. Michailidis has the jiu-jitsu in his back pocket, has the kickboxing in his, change pocket maybe? Like, he's a kickboxing champion, but not to the ilk of Alex Pereira. And if this one stays standing, Pereira's going to knock him out with a left hook from hell. So I think it's an amazing fight. Michailidis has that opportunity with that. Again, back pocket jiu-jitsu. His takedowns aren't that great, and for Pereira, he's had those 2 fights in kickboxing. Aaron touched on it, the fact that he's fought the highest of the high level at light heavyweight this year. Won one by split, lost one by split. Matt, I love this fight, but for me, I have a hard time with Andreas because his striking defense isn't really the greatest, and his wrestling takedowns aren't really the greatest. He could definitely get a win here. Again, I said this at the start of the week. Stay away from this fight. This is the pop and popcorn fight of the entire card. This is going to be wild. I think Alex Pereira knocks him out, though.
So do I. This is the thing about Alex Pereira, though, that I am a little bit concerned about. It's something that I just think we should all watch for. So when you're watching the fight, keep this in the back of your mind. I think he's kind of stiff to be an MMA fighter. I really do. And that's something I'm going to worry about when he fights the upper echelon guys. Will that matter when he fights Michailidis? Maybe not. But it is something that might tell the tale for later on in his UFC career. Let's say he is able to get his combinations off, but every single time he's going for that big knockout shot, Michailidis is able to close the distance, create just no separation whatsoever, and avoid that big power shot. If he can just rinse and repeat getting in and out of the clinch, it's not going to make for an exciting fight, but it's going to not get him knocked out, if that makes any sense. Pereira might still win a decision, but it's going to show a few holes in Pereira's game. That is the only thing I worry about. Like when Adesanya came over and fought Rob Wilkinson. Wilkinson's a really good wrestler, and Adesanya showed the ability to defend the takedown, use his hands to push off on the head, and use his feet to escape the takedown attempts. That's what I need to see Pereira do in this fight for me to then say, wow, his striking is going to really translate into the UFC and into MMA.
Over in the comments section, Brad H saying Michailidis wrestled the submission. Okay, the only thing that scares me about that is Modestas Bukauskas has terrible takedown defense, and even he was able to knock out Michailidis when he was going for a double leg that he committed too much to. His takedowns are like Ryan Spann's takedowns. Get out of there if you're in a bad position. Oh wait, those elbows are coming. Now I'm knocked out. So I worry about it that way. For me, I've got Pereira in this fight. It should be amazing regardless. Whoever wins this fight, it's going to be great, but I reserve the, the big caveats, the air quotes, whatever. I like Pereira, but I wouldn't bet on it because, again, he's 3-1 in MMA. He is a kickboxer.
I'm going to say this right now. Craig's going to roll his eyes. You know what I know sold Islam beating Dan Hooker? Because I was like, yeah, if you're going to beat Dan Hooker, that's how you're going to do it. That's going to be me probably after this fight if Pereira wins by knockout. But Joe Rogan's not going to have that feeling. If Pereira wins by knockout,
we're going to the moon.
Oh, yeah. Like, take a shot at home if you hear Joe Rogan say, this guy's ready for Adesanya right now. He's ready for top 15 talents.
He's not Yanni the Greek.
I think people are going to get hyped up based on this win, but I do think we have to taper our expectations just based on what his level of competition is in his debut.
All right, Matt, so we move into the main card, and this is when that Fight Night Picks fight companion, the Fight Night Picks companion kicks off. Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje. And listen, I talked about this with coworkers this week. I said, I get hyped about certain fights like, I don't know, Jocelyn Edwards, Jessica Rose Clark. I can find little bits and pieces. I can get excited about it. Aspen Ladd taking on Norma Dumont. Little things I can get excited about.
No one was excited
Pick the underdog. Pick the underdog. Look who won. But there's things that I can just kind of pump people up about. I've told everybody and their dog, anybody that I meet in the streets, these guys are fighting this weekend, and I absolutely love it. Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler is one of the best fights that's been made on paper in my entire lifetime. These guys, bang, they're Julian Lane type fighters. And the best part is, if they get rocked, they can go to wrestling. But if they go to wrestling, maybe the other guy hits them with an uppercut. They know exactly what to do. These guys know each other like the back of their hands. I really hope they know the back of their hands. Michael Chandler knows the new tattoo on the back of his arm, so there's all of that.
What are we doing?
But Matt, this fight is wild. VT saying Chandler has more ways to win, but will he use them? I guess. Got to put a question mark on the end of that one. You confused me. Matthew is saying, best fight since Barboza, Chikadze. Lausnan saying, go team. Whitman for my money. This is the first of three Whitman fighters. Matt, I'm so excited that I'm tripping over my words. I love this fight stylistically. Trouble is, though, when one guy gets rocked, he wrestles. When the other guy gets rocked, he becomes more of a striker. So that's what gets crazy here. And I agree with the commenter from earlier, from VT. Chandler is one of those guys that when he gets hurt, he goes for you. He takes you down like the Brent Primus fight. And then it's, well, not good night, Brent. It's have a fun ride, Brent.
Or he just isn't really able to recover after he initially gets rocked. And that's what I'm worried about with Michael Chandler. He doesn't really recover well after he gets hurt. There's kind of different ways a fighter can get hurt. There's guys just don't have great shins, where if they get hit by a solid strike, you're worried they go down. Like Anthony Davis when he falls after a foul. Some guys are kind of built like that. They just go down. Some guys get dropped, but they get back up, and that's what matters. Like Michael Bisping. I don't think Michael Bisping had like a 10 out of 10 chin, but when he went down, he would get back up, and that's what really matters. Then there's your ability to recover after you ate a big shot. Again, Michael Bisping would be kind of in the Hall of Fame tier for his ability to recover after he ate a big shot. Michael Chandler just isn't able to get his sea legs back almost. Once he is hurt, it's really hard for him to sort of shake those cobwebs out. Whereas with Justin Gaethje, the fight doesn't even start until he gets hit. That used to be the Keith Jardine thing. It was, hey, if you're watching Keith Jardine fight, it doesn't start until either he gets dropped or he gets cut. Justin Gaethje's cut from that exact same cloth. Now, he has adopted a slightly different style as of late, but it's been weird with this extended layoff after his last fight. We saw him be a more hesitant version of himself against Khabib, and we all saw how that turned out for him. He still gets taken down. He gets dominated on the mat. So if Chandler gets this to the ground, I think he's going to be able to have a field day, probably cut through Gaethje's guard like it's hot butter. And when it comes to jiu-jitsu, I think Chandler is on another level than Justin Gaethje. But I don't think it's going to get there. And this is the thing. I think this is like one of those fight of the night style fights, so it's going to be crazy. But I think Justin Gaethje's going to win, and I think he's probably going to win it fast, which sort of sucks because it's going to rob us of probably 15 minutes of great action.
This one starts, and the fight companion starts. We're 5 minutes before 10 p.m. Eastern, so that's when we're going to start. The main card starts at 10 p.m. Eastern. They go through their things. We go through our things. And then we talk about this fight, Matt. I'm going to flip it on over to the odds for this one because I'm sure people are wondering. Chandler, the underdog, open at a plus 120, he's plus 176. Gaethje open minus 140. He is a minus 216 favorite right now. But when I look at this one, yeah, I like Justin Gaethje. With the kicks, how much is he going to kick? Well, he's the type of guy that he's not throwing them to the body where they're going to get caught by Chandler. He's the guy that's throwing them to the low calf. He's going to slow him down a little bit.
Uppercuts from Gaethje are filthy.
And it takes away some of the power from Chandler. But, man, I absolutely love this fight. For me, I'm going Gaethje. You would get Gaethje too, but it should be great.
And last point I want to make on this, good on Justin Gaethje for being like, yeah, I don't really care where my fight is on this card. Like, I can be the opener for the pay-per-view. I can be the co-main event. Like, it is just nice to see that he doesn't really care. And it's cool to see the dynamic all those fighters have, where Trevor Whitman was like, listen, it's a lot of stress to go fight to title fight to title fight. I would just like a little bit of time off between Gaethje's fight and the 2 title fights. So just nice to see that their whole camp's on the same page.
Austin and Brennan Gerber have Michael Chandler, but Austin was nicer about it than Brennan, so come on now, buddy. All right, Matt, we move into our next fight, and listen, all of the commenters this week were excited about this one. Billy Q taking on Shane Burgos. This is another one. It's really tough to try and figure it out because for Burgos, he's lost some fights by finish. For Billy, he usually heats up as the fight goes on. He's got a little bit of power. He's got a lot of bit of volume. He's got a great gas tank. The one time that it abandoned him was in the fight against Gavin Tucker, where he made fun of us on Instagram, but then also kind of covered it by saying the body kick that Gavin hit on me was the reason why I started to tire in that fight. And I believe him 100%. So for me, again, this one's really, really tough, but I've got 2 guests that are going to talk about this fight, Matt. We're going to throw it on over to, again, if you're new to Fight Night Picks, you probably don't know the guests. Oscar Hernandez saying, you guys are great, man. I'm already on my first 6-pack. Let's go. Well, thanks for the super chat, Oscar. But in this one, again, it's such a tight fight. The former host of the first show I was ever on, The Toctagon with Ty O'Keefe, and Kristen King. We're bringing on Kristen. Let's hear what she has to say about it.
What's going on, Fight Night Picks fam? Kristen King here, invited onto the channel by Craig and Matt Allan to provide you guys with my highlight for UFC 268, and that has to be the featherweight fight between Shane Burgos and Billy Quarantillo. This has fight of the night, showstopper, show stealer written all over it, and I'm very excited to see what happens when these two meet in the octagon. 2 guys well known for their finishes as well as their insane output, so it's one you definitely don't want to miss. I'm also interested in some of the storylines attached to it as well. Is this going to be comeback season for Shane Burgos, who, as you know, is on a 2-fight losing streak at the moment? Does he remind people why he is a ranked contender? Or is this going to be a breakout performance made by Billy Q for him to potentially break into the top 15 of the featherweight division? So, got a few questions. Hopefully we can get some answers on Saturday night.
Kristen King, a friend of the show, coming on talking about Quarantillo, who's taken on the man himself, Shane Burgos. Matt, I think, again, this is an amazing fight. It's a great one on paper. We have a second guest, and this is the final of the 7. You guys already know him from the channel, but he's doing great work over with All Stars. And in this one, again, is he the biggest MMA guy since, like, the Schmo from what he did yesterday? Would you say so?
Yeah?
Yeah, he is. You know him. It's JHK.
UFC 268 is stacked, and there are so many great fights, but outside the top 3, the one that you guys should look out for is Billy Q versus Shane Burgos. Burgos brings that power, that precision. Billy Q, on the other hand, brings that relentlessness, that forward pressure. I feel like either Burgos is going to get a knockout or Billy Q is going to get a submission, or the third option is it's going to be a bloody war and these guys are going to beat the hell out of each other. No matter what, we're going to enjoy it. When you look at guys that are coming into the UFC on this card, you got 2 guys, Alex Pereira and Ian Garry. Ian Garry is the next coming of Conor McGregor. That's what people say. You know, he's confident, and he's facing Jordan Williams, a guy that is a dog. It's going to be a hard fight, and if he could get past Jordan Williams, I think the kid has a bright future. Alex Pereira, you know him from his highlights of knocking out Israel Adesanya. Everybody has their eyes on him because they want him to rise up the ranks and face Adesanya in MMA with the small gloves to see if he can knock out Israel again. So everybody's going to be watching him. When you look at the aftermath of this card, the only aftermath that I'm looking forward to, or I'm interested in seeing, is if Colby Covington can become the welterweight champion. If he becomes a welterweight champion, I feel like he's going to flip the script on everybody in that division. And also, there's going to be so many guys in that top 10 that haven't fought Colby Covington lining up to fight him. And it's going to be fresh. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be a lot of shit talking and Colby Covington doing what he does, which is entertaining. Even if you don't like it, it's still entertaining.
He wore a beer costume and a sign that says that he parties harder than John Jones at Fight Circus 3.
I respect it.
You know him as JHK MMA, but Matt, yeah, this fight should be absolutely amazing. I saw it over there in the comments section. Is this going to be a y'all must have forgot about Shane Burgos? Is Billy Q going to be able to go in there, eat the shots in the first, come back in the second, and put on maybe like, again, you got to take this with a grain of salt, but a third round like a Josh Emmett late in the fight but he just starts to pull away with his volume, with his pace, not his power punching, with his volume and his pace. That's the big question. Can Billy Q win the later stages of this fight? Because I don't think he's going to be able to at the start against Burgos. I love this fight on paper, Matt. So many people are excited about it. What are you thinking here?
I respect you so much for doubling down on the Josh Emmett thing. This is the thing about Billy Q. He does have really good cardio. He's got great boxing, and he's just really well-rounded. That's what we love in MMA fighters. How many times have we got on here and said, hey, when any type of a fighter is fighting a well-rounded fighter, we normally pick the guy who has the more opportunities and just abilities to win the fight.
Or the guy that calls us out on Instagram in front of thousands.
Exactly. That happens sometimes too. Now, the thing is, I just don't think this is going to be one of those fights where his cardio is so much better than his opponents, where it's going to become a major factor. Shane Burgos has not shown that he tires in fights at all. Does he take a lot of damage in fights? Yes, he does. And does that contribute to him losing fights in the third round? Yeah, go back and watch the Calvin Kattar fight. He eats some clean shots from Calvin Kattar, which is never a very good idea. And then the same thing with Edson Barbosa. And it's really odd. With Shane Burgos, he is an offensive dynamo, but defensively, he leaves a lot to be desired. Even if his win against Kurt Hollabaugh, he gets dropped by the first shot Kurt throws at him, and then he throws up an armbar off his back. It's one of those weird Bizarro fights where it's like, okay, you show me something I didn't really know that you had, but you showed a weakness in an area I thought you were almost untouchable in. So for Burgos, there are still a few question marks for a guy who is pretty proven in the UFC. I know that's a weird thing to say, but I do like him and his overall style against a guy like Billy Q. And this thing I'm going to say, if their cardios are even if Billy called us out on Instagram or in the DMs, Shane Burgos goes to the body a lot. And if he is able to start stringing together body shots early on in this fight, I do think he's going to be able to put enough water in the basement, to quote the great Teddy Atlas, so that it will be able to allow him to pull apart in the third round. So I just think Burgos will be the one who is able to use and weaponize his cardio more in this matchup.
It's funny, and you hate to kind of talk about it this way, but in teammates, you look at the way that Julio Arce fights, a little bit less on his punches, but he is the type of guy that can weaponize the way that he fights. He targets the body quite a bit, and you look at it, what does Canelo do so well? It's that friggin' left hook right into the body. Shane Burgos is one of those guys that continue to go there. So for me, I like Burgos in this fight. It should be an amazing one. I see a lot of people over there that like Billy, but it's a great fight.
So I guess my question for you is, do you think Billy can out-grapple Burgos for 50 minutes? Because we both have Burgos. I'm just trying to make the conversation around how Billy Q can win this one. Do you think he will go out there and start wrestling a lot early?
No, because you look at, and we didn't talk about this in the first video, and I wish we did, Billy's the guy that's been training with, yikes, the guy that fought Rocky and Rocky Balboa. Antonio Tarver. That's who he's been training with for this camp at Tarver Boxing. So I think Billy's trying to crisp up his hands because he already has cardio. He already has wrestling. So let's just bring that into the mix. I don't know how well that's going to translate into a fight with Burgos, but it could pay a huge dividend. So, again, I'm staying away from another fight like this one. I'm just going to enjoy it on the main card, the fight companion, but I still do like Burgos working the body with hellish power. I like Burgos here.
I do too. I think this should be a great fight,
Let's move into our next one, Matt. Boo!
No one liked this pick, Craig.
Everybody booing us out there. Let's hear it. Where are the boo birds, Matt? You know what? If you're a boo bird, I got something for you. I picked something up at Walmart today. It's really nice. I got some Panini Chronicles. I got a couple of boxes. We're going to open them, and I'm going to make a turn and burn video and put it on our second channel, 15-minute card breaks. You're going to find that there today. I'm not lying. That's coming out after this. So we're talking about it. Maybe you don't like Vera and Edgar. Maybe you like that kind of stuff. You can find it over there. But for both of us at the start of the week, we had Frankie Edgar, the boo type of pick. But Matt, Marlon Vera has so many different ways to win a fight. I mean, you look at it. His grappling's very good when it's on his own terms. His boxing, his striking, his leg kicks are so good. You talk about a guy that can weaponize the pace for 3 rounds. Well, hell, Frankie Edgar can do it for 5. I mean, you look at the fight that he had against Pedro Munoz. I don't care who you thought won that fight. It was great. It was close. And Pedro hits pretty damn hard for a smaller guy at 135. So I love this fight. Ryan Brick is agreeing with us in the comments section, going, Frankie's got this. And Steven saying that Edgar was literally born 40 years ago. He's a man. He's 40. That's true. But Rob Lawrence saying Vera all the way. And Matt, it seems that way that a lot of people have Vera here.
This is my whole point about this fight. I don't think Vera can win a decision. I just don't. I don't think he can outpace Frankie Edgar for 10 minutes in this fight. I think he can for 5. And even go back to Edgar against Jeremy Stevens. That was UFC 205. I know it was a little while ago. But in the second round, he gets hit by a jumping switch kick from Stevens. Gets dropped hard. But he's able to out-wrestle Stevens through the majority of that second round. And he's so good on top and out-grapples him to the point where he still wins a round. He gets dropped really bad in. I think even if he gets hurt by Vera, he's going to be able to wrestle his way to a dominant position. And the thing with Vera is that unless you really do expose yourself and really open up an area to allow him to dig in for a guillotine or a triangle choke or something off his back, I don't think he's a good enough grappler to submit Frankie Edgar off his back. And I definitely don't think he can wrestle with Edgar. So unless he is able to stop him early on in the fight, which could happen, there's a 40-year-old man cutting probably a little bit too much weight for the stage of his career. It was an odd point for him to decide to move down to 135, I will say that. But I still think Frankie is the total package, and I still think he's got better cardio than Vera.
At Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 63% have Vera to get the win to 37% that have Edgar. I've got Frankie Edgar in this fight, and somebody's really not going to like it. Where are you up there? William Tyner saying, bro, don't pick Frankie. Bro, I'm going to pick him either way. I like Frankie in this fight. I'm in the very, very minority here, but again, I think the wrestling's going to show out. If Vera's going to win, it's going to be quick and early. But other than that, I like Frankie. So maybe go Edgar by decision if you want to sprinkle a little bit in there. But for me, yeah, I mean, Vera, he's got those kicks. He can really deter the smaller guy. And Frankie, who's been the smaller guy in like every single one of his fights ever, including the fact that he was the lightweight champion of the world. And one of the better ones, too. But for me, I like Edgar here. Joshua Velasco saying, you're wrong. Joshua,
I have been before and I will be again.
That's the whole thing. I mean, if we got married to these picks, I mean, I'm dressed up for it, but my wife wouldn't be happy. Matt, next fight, we have Rose Namajunas taking on Zhang Weili. It's the remix to Ignition. It's going to be a great one because in this one, the first fight, Rose finishes her quick. For Zhang Weili, a lot of people saying, man, she's way too aggressive. She does this, she does that. She's an amazing fighter. You don't get to 21-1 without being an amazing fighter. Then she loses her last fight. Now we get to the record that we're at right now. So when I look at this fight, it really, really is a tricky one. The odds were par at the start of the week. They're still very, very close. Blue Dash hitting us up in the super chat. Here we've got Corey McGregor saying Rose all day, and Steven saying Zhang makes it ugly. Branch Above saying Thug Rose. It's going to be a really, really tight fight. And again, one of these fighters has made a big change to their camp. One of these fighters has made a little change where for Rose, she's still training at Elevation with Team Onyx. She still has Pat Barry there. She's been training with Brock Lesnar's former wrestling coach up in the upper Midwest, almost to Canada, really. For Zhang, though, she's been training in China. She stuck around in the States. She's out of fight-ready MMA. Eddie Cha, Santino DeFranco. I shout their praises every week. Henry Cejudo saying like pro-American stuff.
I was going to say.
Firing in booze in a training camp. The weirdest stuff I've ever heard of.
Focus more on like wrestling and striking.
I mean, I like the mind games that we're trying to anticipate the American crowd being pro-Rose. But all of it was really weird. I think this is going to be a great fight as long as it lasts. What are we saying here?
I think there's some lessons that everybody in MMA can learn from boxing. I said this before with Jean Villante, and I do think that there's been a large enough sample size for fighters in their last fight missing weight or just not looking great on the scales and then not having a good last performance. I also don't like it when championship caliber fighters lose one fight, completely change their camp. I can't stand it at all. And yes, I like her camp switch. I actually have to say, I agree. I like the camp she's at. I like her training partners. And I like all the people who she's brought in to help her improve. I just don't like the situation around it. I don't like the fact that she got to the mountaintop with a group of people, finally had some sort of adversity, and then thought, no, I'm going to go train with a bunch of new people now. Now, maybe we get this new reinvented version of her. I just think that once we see stuff like this, it's sort of an overcorrection when we don't really need to overcorrect that much. Like, if Weili Zhang just had the exact same camp, maybe she focused a little bit more on her striking defense with the previous coaches, then maybe this fight would be similar to her fight with Joanna or Joanna's second fight with Rose. It'd be that fight of the year caliber, and no one knows who's going to win. It's just, I don't like she immediately shaves her head because she's like, oh, I want to be like Rose. Like Rose shaves her head because she doesn't want that to be a factor. And then you immediately do that. It's like an overreaction. Then you change your camp. It feels like this massive overcorrection out of the camp of Wei Li. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I just don't like all these factors. And the thing with Rose is that we saw her beat Wei Li in the one area we didn't think she'd be able to. She outthought her on the feet. I know for a fact Rose Namajunas is one of the trickiest grapplers in this division, and we didn't even get to see her demonstrate that in their first fight.
Well, that's the craziest part about it. I mean, for Zhang Weili, she has volume, she has power, she has staying ability in every fight except for that one. And for Rose, she's faced that adversity before. The one thing that I saw out there all week about this fight was the fact that people saying that Rose doesn't have a gas tank, Rose tires, Rose this, Rose that, Rose. She beat Jessica Andrade by decision. She beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk by decision. Still, she beat them by decision. And she's finished fighters in the past before. And yeah, she's lost some weird fights. I mean, hey, the Andrade fight's weird. How often do you see female strawweights throwing each other on their heads and finishing them? Not very often. So for me, I really do like Namajunas in this fight. I agree with VT who says Rose's record doesn't really reflect her skill. I think this is going to be an amazing fight. But for me, I'm going with Rose. But I say that ever so slightly because, again, for Zhang Weili, you can't count her out in this fight. Forget about the camp and everything and just focus on the fighter. She's one of the most dynamic fighters that we have in this division. She has a great opportunity here. But for me, yeah, I do like Rose because, again, that one little thing that we didn't get to see in the first fight, her wrestling and her grappling, is where she really shines. And if she didn't even have to show that off, who knows what she could show off in this fight, which is a part of her camp that she's accentuated, too. Keep that in mind as well.
Exactly. Like, Rose Namajunas, I think, has the best jiu-jitsu in the division at the top of it. I truly do believe that. And again, we don't even really see that in a lot of her championship fights, which is just wild to me. So I really like Rose in this fight. I do think she'll be able to get it done. It'll be really interesting to see where this division goes from here because Rose hasn't really fought a lot of the top fighters here, but she has wins over like the top tier. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens to the strawweight division moving forward.
All right, everybody in the comments section, they're split all over the place. Let's move into our main event, Matt. Kamaru Usman taking on Colby Covington. I mean, listen, Kamaru's undisciplined. He's not paying attention to this fight. Nope. He's doing too many interviews. He's got too many No, I'm just kidding. I don't care about any of that. Stop talking about that stuff. It's ridiculous. Focus on this fight. Kamaru Usman's a guy that trained out of, well, what was it? Hard Knocks 365. Sanford, Now we're Sanford MMA. Well, he was only there at Sanford if he was for a little bit of time. But Hard Knocks, Black Zillions before that in Florida. And then changed his whole life to reinvigorate himself, really add those finer touches to his game, and accentuate some of his striking with Trevor Whitman. And he's still there for this camp. So for me, I don't feel like, again, he's overlooked this fight. Yeah, you might hear the things coming out of his mouth, and if Covington wins, you're going to point to that 100% right off the bat. Because Colby Covington, for this fight, has been sitting in his bedroom, listening to D12, and just bumping that Eminem, and just thinking about this fight, getting mad and getting angry. And I don't know how well D12 is going to prove out in this fight for him, but you talk about camp changes. Usman went to better himself with one of the best camps in the world, whereas in the videos in the pre-fight build-up, Colby kind of pushed himself away from one of the best camps in the world to train at MMA Masters, and they're pretty good. And listen, they're no slouches. They have good fighters there as well. I love this fight, Matt, but to me, I don't care as much about like the conversation on the outside. All I want to focus on here is the fight that we have at hand, and it's a good one.
So this is my big point about this fight. And again, I've thought about this point and I've refined it. I've thought about this all morning. Let's say you thought Usman and Covington were equals after their first fight. Let's say Covington showed you enough that, okay, in a rematch it would be different. Since their first fight, he's demonstrated that he can out-wrestle Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley's last fight was against Jake Paul. So just that's sort of the career that Tyron Woodley's had since he lost the belt in the UFC. Now, did Covington look really good in that fight? Yes, he did. But that's the only opportunity we've seen to see Covington make improvements. And while I will admit he did make some improvements, it wasn't against the highest level of competition, at least at the time. Okay, now let's look at the other side of this. Kamaru Usman in his last two fights has knocked out Gilbert Burns, a former friend, training partner, and one of the more dangerous guys in the division, after facing adversity in the first round of the fight. Knocks him out, shows a tremendous chin and far superior striking. And then after that, knocks out Jorge Masvidal, one of the best boxers in the division. Now, does Usman get a little bit wild on the feet? Yes, he does. And is that something that's always going to worry me? Yes, it is. But my point is that Covington's not the type of opponent who can take advantage of that. Covington has good striking, he has great striking technique, and he will never get tired. He's in that Brandon Moreno camp where if fights for 10 rounds, he probably wouldn't lose very many of them. But my issue is that the one hole that Kamaru Usman has in his game is that his striking defense can get a little wild. When he throws his power punches, he leaves himself open. But the guys who take advantage of that hole are big power punchers. Again, I'm the guy who said Santiago Ponzinibbio would have beat Kamaru Usman if they fought all that time ago. And my only reason for saying that was because Ponzinibbio has absurd punching power himself, and he's a really good counter striker. So if Usman went into that fight, threw a big shot, got out of position, Ponzinibbio is the type of opponent who could make him pay for it. Now, Covington's a way better fighter than Ponzinibbio, but my point is that Colby lacks the one skill that can really take advantage of the shortcoming Usman has. So unless Covington goes out there and just completely out-wrestles Kamaru Usman, which is something I don't think anybody thinks is going to happen, I just don't know what new facet or what new wrinkle Covington could add to his game since the last time we've seen these two compete.
I got a Dak Bean, true nor impressed with Usman's past wins compared to Colby. The only thing that I have to say about that, I'm not some big Kamaru Usman defender, but when you knock out Gilbert Burns after getting rocked, and you knock out Jorge Masvidal, and you knock out Colby Covington by TKO, whatever, when late in your career you start knocking guys out, he's doing the opposite of our guy, George St. Pierre. What did GSP do?
Got safe.
He had a bunch of finish wins, and then he got safe. What's Kamaru done? Changed his camp up, become a more dangerous striker against guys that are strikers. And he could have wrestled them, but he's not. Colby in that first fight, you want to have the conversation? I think he won. I thought Covington was on his way to winning that fight. I had him up 3-2 if it ended before he ended up getting finished. So that's where I got to go with that one. I think Covington's one of those guys. You talk about a guy that weaponizes pace in a 5-round fight. Colby Covington has that in droves, in spades, whatever you want to say. And he has great volume on the feet. These guys are so well matched. It's not even funny. So for me, I have Usman by a slim margin in this one, and it is incredibly slim. And because the odds are so much in favor of Usman, part of me considers even saying, hey, I like Covington a little bit. But I'm going with Usman, but I don't like those odds.
I understand where the odds are, because again, Usman does everything Covington does, but he has punching power on the end of it. That's really just the easiest way to look at this fight. Now, yes, Covington probably throws a slightly higher level of volume, and Usman sits down on his shots a little bit more, but these two are as similar of two championship caliber fighters as you will ever find fighting for a UFC belt. Like, normally you've got a great wrestler fighting a great striker, and there's all these different question marks. Like, both these guys are extremely well-rounded and don't really have any massive weaknesses. Now, do either one have a super refined submission game? Maybe not, but they're both such dominant wrestlers that they don't really need it in the end. I agree with all your points about Covington. He's got a good shot, but I think this is one of his worst matchups to ever become UFC champion. If he just came along, like if he got his title shot when he should have against Tyron Woodley, when Woodley was champ, then Colby Covington probably at one point throughout his life is a UFC champion. I just think he got his opportunity at the worst time possible. You're fighting a guy who does everything you do, but he's a slightly better athlete. So I do like Usman in this match.
Both guys stylistically at that press conference wore the ugliest suits I've ever seen. I mean, look at mine. Like, there's flowers in this sucker. You can see it. Look at that. You can see it. I know, it's good. It's really good. But they were both pretty bad, and that guy from ESPN in South Florida, his suit's stupid, and his questions are stupid, too. Matt, I love the fight. Both of us going with Usman in this one. And Matt, if this is somebody's first time with question mark kicks, we go back down through the entire card. I'll talk about the question mark kicks parlay one more time. But we have a fight companion coming up tonight. It starts 5 minutes before that main card, which is at 9:55 p.m. Eastern. You can catch us here. Matt, it should be an amazing one. So let's go back down to the bottom. We have CJ Vergara taking on Ode Osbourne. One of these guys missed weight. I've got the guy that did miss weight. I'm going with Ode Osbourne, the first in the question mark kicks parlay. I'd say a little bit of a buyer beware here at a minus 185. Both guys have a good opportunity, but I do like Osbourne here.
If it's on the Fight Night Picks parlay, Craig, let's be confident about it. Listen, I had CJ Vergara, but I'm really concerned about him missing weight, and I do think Ode Osbourne will be able to catch him with a big shot moving in. I really thought Vergara would have to rely on his ability to take a shot to win this fight, and now I do put that into question because of him missing weight.
All right, Matt, next fight we have Melsik Baghdasaryan taking on Bruno Souza. Bruno Souza missed weight, and he looked a little gaunt on the scale. Take that for what it's worth. Machida Academy's own, the former champion with LFA, and he's coming off of being a champion into a fight with Melsik Baghdasaryan, where it's karate versus kickboxing. Melsik is one of the higher level strikers that you're going to find in MMA. And listen, that's with Alex Pereira on this card, but to me, I like Melsik in this fight. He's a minus, 375 on my card, second leg to the question mark kicks parlay.
I like Melsik before Souza missed weight, and I like him a lot more now.
All right, Matt, the next fight that we have, Dustin Jacoby, John Allan, close fight, so pick either guy if you really want to. I like Jacoby ever so slightly on less than a week's notice, but yeah, that's who I'm going with here.
Yeah, I like Dustin Jacoby in this one.
All right, Matt, the next fight that we have, Gian Villante taking on Chris Barnett. I like the freaky taekwondo of Chris Barnett here, but I don't like the gas tank of either guy.
This isn't a great fight at the UFC level, but I think Chris Barnett is the better of the two.
As an underdog, Matt. Our next fight, Jordan Williams, Ian Garry, third leg of the parlay at a minus 400. Is Ian Garry, you go him, Osbourne, and Baghdasaryan. I got plus 144 there. I like Ian Garry here.
Will Ian Garry be the next Conor McGregor, or will he be the next Thomas Almeida? Now, I personally think he's much closer to like the McGregor level of a star, and hopefully levels of success than Almeida, but he has a big opportunity, and it does feel like the UFC is pushing him quite a bit, so if he is able to get this win, I expect big things from Garry.
Edmen Shahbazyan taking on Nassourdine Imavov. We're split on the pick, if I'm not mistaken. I've got Imavov here.
I think this could be a really fun fight that not enough people are talking about, but I do like Edmen Shahbazyan. I thought there was something special about him a couple of years ago. I can't turn my back on him now.
Can't turn your back on your boy, Matt. Phil Haas taking on Chris Curtis. I've got Phil Haas here.
It's nothing against Chris Curtis. I just don't think this is the division he belongs in, so.
This ain't it for him. Ally Quinta taking on Bobby Green. It's another really good fight, but Matt, I've got Bobby Green here. This is one of the closest ones on the card.
This is like UFC 199 fight of the night, you know? Like, this is such a fun fight in 2016. Still a fun one today, but I do like Bobby Green. I think he'll be the slightly more active guy out of the two.
Andreas Mihailidis with his jiu-jitsu in his back pocket taking on Alex Pereira. And hey, Andreas has kickboxing too, but to me, I've got Pereira. I think he's going to knock him out in the first round.
Michailidis saying he has kickboxing too would be like me walking up to Steve Nash and being like, yeah, I played a little ball in my day. Like, no, let's not even bring it up.
Me going to Connor McDavid. Hey, I
Yeah.
saw that goal you scored last night, but I scored a goal in Rec League too, so we're kind of equal.
Yeah, like there's levels to this game. I wouldn't even bring it up if I'm Michailidis. I like Pereira a lot in this.
All right, Matt. Our next fight, we have Justin Gaethje Chandler. You're going to join us on the Fight Companion. I know you will out there. I've got Justin Gaethje here, but it's a banger.
I think this could be a great fight, but I like Gaethje by stoppage.
All right, Matt. Our next one, Shane Burgos, Billy Quarantillo. In this fight, Matt, the one and only hitting us up in the super chat saying thanks for the show. The Island Boys were on Dana's Insta. Is Hasbulla going to fight Abdul Rozik in the UFC?
Who knows
I don't know.
anymore.
But thanks for the super chat. In this one, I've got Burgos, but again, this is a banger. I'd pop popcorn, whatever.
So I said in the last fight, I guess, that we could be robbed of fight of the night because Gaethje could knock out Chandler with one shot, and same thing vice versa. This doesn't really have that issue. Burgos has to have a lot of volume to win a fight, especially by knockout. Same thing with Billy Q. So I think this is going to be a great fight no matter what, but I do like Burgos.
Scott, I'm sorry. You're asking for locks, man. Preet with MMA Lock of the Night. He's the lock guy. I'm sorry. That's where we get hurt.
I say that word and it results in a terrible loss. So.
Yeah. Mark Sims hitting us up saying not the first time watching FNP, but first time really weighing in. Thanks for putting this stuff together week after week.
Well,
Appreciate you, Mark. We wanted to make it a special show with all of the guests. It's been a lot of fun. We move up to Edgar Vera. We have the underdog here. It is not the sexy pick.
People do not like us picking Frankie Edgar over Marlon Vera, but I'm going to stick by it.
All right. You got to stick with what you're knowing. Rose Namajunas, Zhang Wei Li, really close fight. Going with the champion and still here.
I think she'll be able to get it done. Maybe even by submission. Again, we haven't seen these two grapple, and I do believe Rose the superior grappler.
All right, Matt. And then in the main event, Usman, Covington. A strong preponderance of votes towards Covington, but you guys didn't vote in the poll that was there because 70% of almost 1,500 votes have Usman. So just like Covington supporters online, very vocal crew over there in the comments section going with Covington. But for me, I've got Usman here.
Yeah, I really like Usman in this matchup, but this should be another great fight. People forget, this was like arguably fight of the year in 2019, so I don't expect this to just be some really boring, like drag him out clinch fest. I think this will be a great fight.
Matt, it should be an amazing, amazing night of fights. I think it's going to be an awesome one. You can find us over with the Fight Companion. We're going to go live 5 minutes before the main card, and somebody asked their Michigonian, are we going to break the Chronicles live? We're going to break them on our second channel. 15-minute card breaks. I'll have that video out quickly. So you can find it over there. Link down below in the comment section, or not in the comment section, in the description for that one. You can find us as always at Fight Night Picks on Instagram. I absolutely love the card. It starts in about a half an hour, Matt. Ooh. We're fired up for it. We're looking forward to it. So as we always say with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it. And let's go. It's going to be a good one.
Good show. That was a great show.